Alex hadn't been back to the neighborhood in over 10 years. Life had taken them far from the streets they had grown up on, the parks they had played in, and the neighbors who had watched them grow. There had been a mix of excitement and nervousness as Alex drove down the familiar roads, memories rushing back with every turn. The houses looked different, some newer, some older, but the essence of the street remained. There was a strange comfort in seeing the oak trees lining the sidewalks and the mailbox at the corner, still standing where it had for decades. The air felt familiar, carrying the sense of freshly cut grass, blooming flowers, and the faint aroma of barbecue smoke from some backyard grill. As Alex approached the house they had grown up in, a strange feeling came over them. The driveway, once inviting and open, now had a bright red "No Trespassing" sign planted firmly in the ground. The sign seemed almost aggressive, a stark warning against entering. Alex stopped the car a few feet away, heart pounding. Memories of the house, of laughter, of family gatherings, of quiet nights watching stars from the porch, all collided with this new reality. The house still looked the same in some ways, but the aura of ownership and welcome they remembered was gone, replaced by an official and unyielding boundary. Alex got out of the car and walked slowly toward the sign, studying it. The letters were bold, clear, and unambiguous. No trespassing. The words themselves felt like a challenge. For a moment, Alex felt the weight of years pressing down, a mixture of fear and anger rising. How could an organization, some distant board of people, try to dictate who could and could not step onto a property that had been theirs for so long? Yet beneath the frustration, a strong sense of belonging pushed Alex forward. They had every right to see this place, to reconnect with it, even if it was now wrapped in rules they didn't understand. As Alex stepped closer, a voice called out, "Can I help you?" A neighbor appeared, a woman holding a clipboard. She was precise, serious, and looked prepared to enforce rules. Alex realized immediately that this was someone from the HOA, someone responsible for upholding the community's regulations. Alex tried to smile, hoping to ease the tension, but the woman's expression was unreadable. She introduced herself, explaining her role and reminding Alex that stepping onto the property could be considered trespassing. Alex tried to speak, to explain their connection to the house, but the words felt tangled in their throat. It seemed impossible to convey years of history and ownership in a few sentences. The conversation was awkward and frustrating. Alex felt a surge of emotion, a mix of disbelief and determination. They had returned home, and yet they were being treated like a stranger. The woman, holding her clipboard like a shield, recited the rules and regulations as if the history and memories tied to the house were irrelevant. Alex tried to counter with stories, with facts, but she remained unmoved, quoting policies that seemed rigid and unyielding. The driveway felt smaller, more confining, as though the freedom Alex had once felt there was being squeezed out by bureaucracy. Reluctantly, Alex stepped back, feeling a mix of defeat and resolve. They needed a plan, a way to reclaim not just their house but the sense of belonging that came with it. That night, Alex sat in their car parked a block away, looking at the house from a distance. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the familiar shape of the house seemed both welcoming and hostile at the same time. Alex took a deep breath and began to think. There had to be a way to challenge this, to prove that the house was theirs, and that no sign or rule could erase the connection they had to this place. The next day, Alex returned armed with a notebook and a camera. They walked slowly around the neighborhood, taking photos, noting details, and reacquainting themselves with the surroundings. The park down the street, the corner store, the fence where they used to play hopscotch. Everything carried echoes of the past. Neighbors, some of whom remembered Alex, nodded or smiled from a distance. Their presence reminded Alex that this community, though now under strict rules, still contained people who valued history and memory. Alex spent hours documenting the house and its surroundings. They noted the property lines, the condition of the yard, and any signs of modifications. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, felt like a step toward reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. The frustration of the previous day still lingered, but it was now mingled with purpose. This was no longer just about a visit. It was about standing up, about asserting rights, about ensuring that a lifetime of connection and history couldn't be dismissed with a sign. As days passed, Alex began speaking to neighbors who were willing to share memories and insights. Some were surprised and happy to see Alex back. They recounted stories of the family, of times when Alex had been a child running through yards, riding bikes, and making friends. These conversations were invaluable. They not only strengthened Alex's claim to belonging, but also reminded them of the human connections that made this place home. Each neighbor willing to share a story became an ally in a larger, quiet battle against rules that seemed disconnected from reality. Throughout this time, Alex also researched property laws and HOA regulations. The internet became a resource, a way to understand the limits of HOA authority and the rights of property owners. Alex learned that while HOAs could enforce community guidelines, there were clear boundaries, and certain rights could not be overridden by a simple sign. This knowledge fueled Alex's determination. The house had stood through years, through changes in the neighborhood and in life itself. And it wasn't about to be taken away by bureaucracy. Every step Alex took, every conversation and every note written was a small act of reclaiming agency. The memories of past birthdays, holidays, and quiet evenings on the porch added weight to the mission. This was more than a legal battle. It was personal, deeply rooted in years of living, loving, and growing in a place that had shaped Alex's identity. The frustration, the fear, and the resolve combined into a quiet strength. Alex knew that patience and careful preparation would be key. They weren't just returning to a house, they were returning to a part of themselves. By the end of the first week, Alex had a clearer understanding of the challenges ahead. The "No Trespassing" sign was more than just a physical barrier. It symbolized a disconnect between memory and authority, between belonging and regulation. But Alex was ready to navigate that challenge. With evidence collected, neighbors on their side, and knowledge of the law at their fingertips, the path forward was becoming visible. The journey had just begun, but already, Alex felt the first stirrings of victory. Returning after years wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary, and Alex was prepared to see it through, one careful step at a time. Alex knew that returning to the house was only the beginning. After the first confrontation with the HOA representative, they realized that reclaiming the home would require patience, strategy, and determination. The feeling of frustration lingered, but it was now paired with a new sense of purpose. Alex spent the next morning reviewing every detail of their previous visit. Each interaction, each word exchanged, every gesture from the HOA board member was carefully considered. It became clear that simply showing up wouldn't be enough. They needed a plan, one that would combine evidence, witnesses, and the law to ensure their presence on the property was undeniable. The first step was reconnecting with neighbors who remembered Alex's family. Walking around the block, Alex greeted familiar faces and introduced themselves to new ones. Conversation started casually, but slowly the topic shifted toward the HOA and the recent tensions. Some neighbors expressed sympathy, sharing stories of similar disputes with the HOA over rules that felt excessive. These conversations gave Alex not only support, but also valuable insights into how the HOA operated and where they might be vulnerable. It became clear that community opinion could play a critical role in asserting rights, and Alex began noting down which neighbors might be willing to provide statements or testify if needed. Meanwhile, Alex began gathering tangible proof of their connection to the property. Old photographs of family gatherings, utility bills from years past, and official documents showing past ownership were collected and organized. Each piece of evidence was carefully scanned, cataloged, and stored in a secure folder. The goal was not only to have documentation ready, but also to understand the story it told, a story of years spent in the house, of belonging, and of memories tied deeply to the property. The evidence wasn't just legal, it was personal, showing that Alex's claim wasn't abstract but lived and real. One afternoon, as Alex returned to the house to take more photographs, another HOA member approached. Unlike the first encounter, this person seemed less aggressive but equally firm. They repeated the warnings, emphasizing rules that forbade anyone from entering private property without authorization. Alex stayed calm, explaining that they were documenting the house for personal reasons and not intending to violate rules. The board member listened, but the skepticism in their eyes was clear. Each encounter reinforced the understanding that reclaiming the house would not be immediate. The HOA had authority, but Alex had history, evidence, and community ties, and they needed to make those strengths clear. Over the following days, Alex started visiting the local records office. Property deeds, zoning documents, and old neighborhood plans were examined. Each piece of official information provided clarity about ownership rights and the legal limits of HOA enforcement. Alex learned that while the HOA could regulate certain aspects of the community, they could not legally bar a rightful resident from entering their property. This knowledge was empowering. It transformed frustration into strategy. Alex realized that careful documentation and a clear understanding of the law could turn the balance in their favor. During this time, Alex also began paying closer attention to the HOA board's behavior. Observing from a distance, noting which members were more aggressive, and understanding how decisions were made became part of the plan. Conversations with neighbors revealed stories of past disputes, patterns of favoritism, and moments when board members had overstepped their authority. Each insight was like a piece of a puzzle, helping Alex see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one house or one confrontation. It was about understanding how the system worked and finding openings where fairness could be enforced. In parallel, Alex carefully built relationships with supportive neighbors. Friendly greetings, small favors, and genuine conversations helped establish trust. Neighbors who remembered Alex's childhood welcomed their presence, often sharing anecdotes that highlighted the family's long-standing connection to the community. These interactions were crucial. Beyond legal documents, they created a network of witnesses who could validate Alex's rightful place in the neighborhood. The sense of community, once a simple feeling, was becoming a tangible part of the effort to reclaim the home. At night, Alex reviewed every document, photograph, and note collected throughout the week. Patterns emerged. Old utility bills confirmed residency. Property records showed family ownership history, and neighbor statements hinted at widespread support. This preparation was meticulous and sometimes exhausting, but Alex understood its importance. Every piece of evidence could make a difference if the confrontation escalated to a formal dispute. The act of preparing was also empowering. The feeling of helplessness from the initial visit was fading, replaced with confidence built on knowledge and action. The turning point came when Alex decided to test the waters again. They returned to the house, this time with a few neighbors who were willing to speak on their behalf. Walking slowly up the driveway, Alex felt the familiar mix of nervousness and determination. The HOA board member who had confronted them before was there, clipboard in hand, ready to issue another warning. But the presence of supportive neighbors shifted the dynamic. Alex spoke calmly, presenting the historical context and emphasizing that this house had been a part of their life for decades. The neighbors confirmed the story, recounting memories and providing a human element that no sign or rule could erase. The interaction was tense, but civil. The HOA member repeated rules, but the collective presence of neighbors and Alex's documentation made it clear that this wasn't a simple trespassing case. The situation didn't resolve instantly, but a subtle shift occurred. The board member, while firm, seemed less confident in enforcing the prohibition against someone with such deep ties to the property. Alex left the house that day with renewed determination. Progress might be slow, but it was happening. The initial barrier was no longer unassailable. Cracks had begun to appear. In the evenings, Alex reflected on each encounter. The process was about more than just a physical return. It was about asserting identity, history, and rights. Memories of childhood, of family, and of belonging fueled the effort. Every photograph, every conversation, every document collected was a step toward reclaiming not just the house, but the sense of home. Alex began to realize that patience, persistence, and careful strategy were as important as knowledge and evidence. The fight wasn't over, but the path forward was becoming clearer. The frustration from the initial encounter had transformed into focus, and Alex was ready to take the next steps toward regaining what was rightfully theirs. Alex knew that preparation and understanding would be key to moving forward. After weeks of documenting the house, talking to neighbors, and researching property laws, the next step was to gather even stronger evidence. The goal was to build an unassailable case that the house was not just a place, but a home with a long and rightful connection to Alex. The mornings were spent visiting the local records office, flipping through property deeds, zoning documents, and old city maps. Each page turned gave Alex a clearer picture of the legal rights they held, and also revealed the limits of the HOA's power. One day, while reviewing historical records, Alex discovered old tax receipts and family records confirming that their family had maintained ownership and responsibility for the property for decades. These documents were more than just papers. They were a lifeline, proof that the claim to the house was legitimate and supported by history. Alex carefully photographed and cataloged each one, making notes about their significance. Every receipt, every deed, every old letter from city offices added weight to the narrative. It was becoming clear that the house had never really left their family, even if the HOA tried to act as though it had. Meanwhile, Alex continued to strengthen connections with supportive neighbors. Conversations deepened and more stories were shared about Alex's family, about past community events, and about the house itself. Some neighbors remembered helping with renovations or attending family gatherings. Others recalled quiet evenings spent talking on the porch or watching kids play in the yard. Each story was a thread weaving a tapestry of proof that the house was a living part of the neighborhood, not just a property subject to arbitrary restrictions. Alex realized that these personal accounts were as powerful as any legal document. They provided a human element that no sign or rule could erase. One afternoon, Alex returned to the house with a few trusted neighbors to take photographs and video recordings of the property. They carefully documented every angle, every feature, and every detail that had remained unchanged over the years. The house looked familiar and yet different, like a memory slightly altered by time. These recordings were not just evidence. They were a way to capture the essence of the home, to show that it was more than walls and a roof. It was a place that held memories, emotions, and a connection to the community. At the same time, Alex began drafting letters and notes that could be used if the confrontation escalated to legal action. Each letter was precise, clear, and respectful, explaining the rightful connection to the house and asking for acknowledgement of their rights. The language was firm but polite, emphasizing evidence, history, and personal connection rather than aggression. Alex knew that any future confrontation with the HOA would require calm and reasoned communication, and these drafts became practice in presenting their case in the most compelling way. The HOA, however, was not idle. Notices continued to arrive, some more aggressive than others, warning Alex to stay away and threatening fines or legal action. Each notice was carefully read and cataloged, added to the growing collection of evidence showing the HOA's attempts to enforce rules beyond their authority. Rather than intimidating Alex, these letters strengthened their resolve. The rules might be strict, but they were not absolute. With the right evidence, the history of the property, and the support of neighbors, Alex could challenge them effectively. One evening, Alex met with a lawyer who specialized in property and HOA disputes. The meeting was thorough and eye-opening. The lawyer explained the legal framework, the limitations of HOA authority, and the best strategies for asserting rights. Alex listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions about every detail. The conversation provided clarity and confidence. For the first time since returning, Alex felt that a path forward was not only possible but likely to succeed if approached methodically. The legal perspective transformed the challenge from an emotional battle into a strategic plan. With guidance from the lawyer, Alex prepared a folder containing all evidence: neighbor statements, historical records, photographs, and videos. Each piece was labeled and explained, creating a clear and logical story that demonstrated a deep and rightful connection to the house. It wasn't just a collection of documents. It was a narrative showing that this property was more than just real estate. It was a home with decades of memories and community ties. As the days went by, Alex continued observing the HOA board from a distance. Meetings, informal discussions, and public notices were all noted, providing insight into the board's dynamics and decision-making processes. Alex realized that understanding the human element behind the rules could be just as important as knowing the legal boundaries. Who was firm, who was lenient, and who could be swayed by logic or community opinion became valuable knowledge. The HOA was a system run by people, and understanding people was essential. Alex also focused on building emotional support, not just legal or factual strength. Conversations with old friends and family provided encouragement and reminded Alex why reclaiming the house mattered. The fight was about more than a structure. It was about preserving history, identity, and personal connection. These moments of reflection helped maintain focus and energy, preventing frustration from becoming discouragement. One afternoon, Alex and a neighbor noticed minor violations in the neighborhood rules being overlooked by the HOA, such as unapproved landscaping changes or vehicles parked slightly out of line. These observations were noted carefully, not for retaliation, but to understand how strictly rules were applied. It became clear that the HOA had inconsistencies, showing that their enforcement was more about control than fairness. This realization provided another layer of confidence, reinforcing the belief that the board's authority had limits and could be challenged. Finally, after weeks of preparation, Alex felt ready for the next phase, presenting their case in a more formal, direct manner. Every document, photograph, and neighbor statement had been collected, every detail carefully analyzed, and every strategy rehearsed. The HOA might have tried to intimidate, but Alex had turned frustration into preparation and fear into knowledge. The story of the house, its memories, and its rightful connection to Alex was now ready to be presented in a way that could not be ignored. As Alex looked at the house from the street that evening, the memories of childhood mingled with anticipation for the coming confrontation. The house seemed to recognize Alex's determination, standing silently in the fading light. It was more than a building. It was a symbol of years gone by, of family and community, and of the fight for belonging. The journey had been long, and the challenge was far from over. But for the first time, Alex felt in control. The stage was set, and Alex was ready to face the HOA with confidence, evidence, and unwavering resolve. Alex knew the moment had come to confront the HOA directly. After weeks of preparation, gathering evidence, and building community support, it was time to face the board and assert their rights. The day began with careful planning. Alex reviewed every document, photograph, and neighbor statement. Each piece of evidence was organized to create a clear, logical narrative, demonstrating their long-standing connection to the property. The goal was not to attack the HOA, but to present an undeniable case that could not be ignored. Arriving at the HOA office, Alex felt a mix of nerves and determination. The building looked the same as it had during past visits, but today felt different. With neighbors in support and a folder full of evidence, Alex walked through the door and requested a formal meeting with the board. The receptionist seemed surprised but directed Alex to the conference room, where several board members were already seated. Their expressions were cautious, perhaps curious, as Alex took a seat and laid out the prepared documents. The meeting began formally, with the board chair explaining their role and reiterating the community rules. Alex listened carefully, nodding respectfully, then responded with a calm, measured tone. They explained their history with the property, providing specific details about the family's connection and the years spent maintaining and living in the home. Alex presented photographs of family gatherings, letters, utility bills, and property deeds. Each piece of evidence was introduced with context, demonstrating both legal and personal ties to the house. The board members exchanged glances, occasionally taking notes. One member, clearly more assertive, questioned the relevance of certain documents, but Alex calmly explained each one's significance. The meeting continued, alternating between the HOA's references to community rules and Alex's presentation of historical and legal evidence. What had started as a potential confrontation began to feel more like a structured dialogue. The evidence and the presence of supportive neighbors shifted the dynamic. The board could no longer rely on intimidation. The facts were now on the table. During the discussion, Alex also shared statements from neighbors who could testify about their family's long-standing presence in the community. Each statement added weight, illustrating that this was not just an abstract claim but a lived reality. Memories of shared events, assistance with community projects, and personal interactions all contributed to a human narrative that the board could not easily dismiss. Alex emphasized that the house was part of the community's history and that their return was not a threat but a rightful reconnection. As the meeting progressed, tensions remained, but a subtle change occurred. The board members, initially rigid, began asking clarifying questions instead of issuing threats. Alex responded with patience, providing clear explanations, showing documentation, and maintaining a calm, respectful demeanor. The presence of neighbors, some speaking briefly to confirm memories, added credibility and reinforced the personal connection to the house. Slowly, the board's approach shifted from enforcement to consideration. Midway through the meeting, the discussion turned to the no trespassing signs. Alex pointed out that while community rules could regulate aesthetics or certain activities, they could not legally bar a rightful resident from accessing their property. The legal documents and historical records reinforced this point. Alex's explanation was firm but polite, highlighting that this was not about disregarding community guidelines but about protecting fundamental rights tied to ownership and history. The clarity and preparation began to erode the board's initial confidence in enforcing restrictions. The conversation continued for over an hour. Alex remained composed, addressing each concern raised by the board members and responding with evidence or reasoned argument. The neighbors added context when necessary, providing the human element that legal documents alone could not convey. By the end of the meeting, the dynamic had shifted noticeably. The board was no longer in a position of absolute authority. Alex's careful preparation and unwavering calm had created a new balance. After the formal discussion, there was a brief recess. In the quiet of the hallway, Alex and the supportive neighbors spoke about the progress made. Though the outcome was not finalized, the shift in the board's demeanor was a clear sign that the case had been taken seriously. This pause offered a moment of reflection, and Alex realized that preparation, patience, and persistence had transformed a stressful confrontation into a structured and constructive dialogue. Returning to the conference room, the meeting resumed with a focus on resolution. Alex proposed a reasonable plan for reestablishing access to the house, while respecting certain community guidelines. This included clear agreements on property boundaries and cooperation with community rules that did not infringe on rightful ownership. The board discussed the proposal among themselves, asking questions and reviewing evidence once again. Alex listened and responded, demonstrating flexibility without compromising their position. The atmosphere was professional, but no longer adversarial. By the end of the meeting, the board made a formal acknowledgement of Alex's right to access the property. The no trespassing signs would be removed, and the rules clarified to prevent future misunderstandings. The acknowledgement was not a victory in the sense of conflict won, but it was a restoration of rights, dignity, and a sense of belonging. Alex felt a wave of relief mixed with pride. The journey had been challenging, but methodical preparation, evidence, and support had turned the tide. After leaving the office, Alex and the neighbors walked down the familiar streets. The sun was beginning to set, casting warm light on the houses and trees. Conversations were filled with reflection on the process, laughter, and shared memories. Alex realized that the confrontation had strengthened bonds within the community and had reaffirmed the value of history, connection, and persistence. This was not just a victory for one person. It was a reminder that fairness and preparation could overcome intimidation and arbitrary control. Returning to the house, Alex removed the red signs that had seemed so threatening weeks before. Each sign taken down felt symbolic, representing a reclaiming of not just property but belonging and identity. Neighbors gathered briefly, sharing congratulations and support. The house, which had seemed distant and unwelcoming at first, now felt alive again. It was no longer just a structure. It was home, a place of memories, and a testament to perseverance. In the following days, Alex continued to document the resolution. Photographs were taken of the house without signs. Letters of acknowledgement from the HOA were stored safely, and conversations with supportive neighbors were recorded. This documentation was not for conflict but for reflection and protection, a record of the process that ensured clarity and fairness in the future. Alex also began small acts of restoration around the property, reconnecting with the home physically as well as emotionally. Through the experience, Alex learned valuable lessons about patience, preparation, and the importance of understanding both rules and people. The challenge with the HOA had been significant, but it also revealed the strength of community support, the power of evidence, and the value of calm, respectful communication. Returning after years had been difficult, but it had reaffirmed what home truly meant: connection, memory, and the right to belong. The house was no longer just a place on a map. It was a symbol of resilience, family, and rightful presence in the community. After the confrontation with the HOA, Alex felt a mix of relief and accomplishment. The house that had seemed off-limits for so long now welcomed them back openly. Walking up the driveway, removing the last traces of the red "No Trespassing" signs, Alex felt a surge of emotions. Memories of childhood, family. Celebrations and quiet evenings on the porch returned with vivid clarity. The house wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a living testament to years of connection, growth, and resilience. Neighbors who had witnessed the struggle came over to offer congratulations and support. Conversations were filled with laughter, shared stories, and a sense of community that had been strengthened through the ordeal. Some neighbors spoke about the HOA and their past experiences, but the tone was no longer tense. The presence of Alex and their family's history reminded everyone that the neighborhood was built on relationships, not just rules. Alex realized that the struggle had not only restored personal rights, but had also deepened the sense of belonging and trust within the community. Inside the house, Alex walked from room to room, taking in the details that had changed and those that had remained. The walls held echoes of past conversations, the floors remembered the footsteps of a childhood spent running freely, and the windows framed views of a neighborhood that had shaped identity and memories. Alex paused in the living room, reflecting on the journey. The weeks of preparation, documentation, and confrontation had been exhausting, but they had transformed a simple return into a meaningful victory. The house was now theirs in every sense, a symbol of resilience and rightful presence. In the following days, Alex focused on reconnecting with the home in practical ways. Minor repairs were made, plants were replanted in the garden, and small projects that had been postponed for years were completed. Each action reinforced a sense of ownership and belonging. The home became a place where past memories blended with present reality, creating a space that felt alive and personal once again. Even the small rituals like brewing coffee in the kitchen or opening windows to let in sunlight felt like acts of reclaiming life and comfort. Alex also spent time reflecting on the lessons learned through the conflict with the HOA. Patience, preparation, and calm communication had been crucial. Understanding both the rules and the people enforcing them had allowed for a strategic and respectful approach. The struggle had reinforced the importance of community connections, showing that allies, neighbors, and shared memories could be powerful in asserting rights. This was more than a personal victory. It was a reminder that fairness and preparation could overcome intimidation and rigid authority. The experience also led Alex to think about the broader community. Conversations with neighbors revealed common concerns about HOA overreach and strict rules. Alex shared insights from the journey, encouraging dialogue and promoting understanding between residents and the board. While the conflict had been personal, it became an opportunity for education and connection, showing that fairness and open communication could prevent similar tensions in the future. Alex felt proud not only of reclaiming the home, but also of contributing to a stronger, more understanding neighborhood. In the evenings, Alex often sat on the porch, looking at the familiar streets bathed in soft light. The sounds of children playing, distant laughter, and the gentle hum of life in the neighborhood created a comforting background. These moments of quiet reflection were filled with gratitude for the support received, the perseverance shown, and the successful reclaiming of a space that was more than just property. It was a home, a memory keeper, and a symbol of identity. Family and friends visited, bringing warmth, stories, and shared experiences back into the house. Celebrations, casual dinners, and simple conversations reminded Alex of the importance of presence and connection. The house, once threatened by signs and rules, was now a hub of life, laughter, and community. Each interaction, each shared moment, strengthened the feeling that the house had always been theirs, and now it could truly function as a home once again. Looking back on the entire journey, Alex realized that the return after years had been about more than overcoming an organization's overreach. It had been about standing firm in the face of challenges, valuing history and memory, and asserting one's rightful place in the world. The process had reinforced the importance of patience, preparation, and calm determination. It had also highlighted the power of community support, neighborly bonds, and personal integrity. The house was no longer just a physical structure. It represented resilience, justice, and the enduring power of human connection. As weeks turned into months, the home continued to thrive. Alex maintained relationships with neighbors, nurtured the property, and reflected on the lessons learned. Each day in the house was a reminder that the struggle had been worth it. The return after years, once fraught with obstacles and uncertainty, had ended not with conflict but with restoration, pride, and belonging. The house stood as a testament to perseverance, community, and the human spirit, a place where memories, identity, and home would endure for years to come. Even after the formal resolution with the HOA, Alex's journey with the house continued. Returning after years had taught them more than just patience and perseverance. It had revealed the depth of community, the importance of history, and the quiet power of resilience. Each day in the home was now a chance to reconnect not only with the physical space, but also with the memories, the neighborhood, and the people who had been part of their life long before the conflict began. Alex started spending more time engaging with neighbors, learning about changes in the community over the past decade. Some houses had new families, some neighbors had moved, and some familiar faces remained, providing a comforting sense of continuity. Conversations ranged from casual greetings to shared stories about the neighborhood's past, its growth, and even small frustrations with the HOA that others had experienced. Alex found that these discussions built connections stronger than before, transforming what had been a conflict into an opportunity to reinforce community bonds. Inside the house, Alex focused on restoration and personalization. Rooms were cleaned, walls repainted, and furniture rearranged to create spaces that felt comfortable and welcoming. Each small project, whether fixing a leaky faucet, planting new flowers in the garden, or organizing old photographs, was a reminder that home was more than a location. It was a living space shaped by care, attention, and love. Memories of past family gatherings inspired little touches that brought warmth and familiarity back into every corner of the home. The garden, in particular, became a place of reflection and peace. Alex planted flowers that had been favorites in childhood, arranged shrubs that reminded them of past family efforts, and created small seating areas where neighbors could gather. The garden soon became a space where memories and new experiences could coexist. Neighbors would stop by, sharing stories, helping with small tasks, or simply enjoying the quiet beauty of the yard. The act of nurturing the garden became symbolic of reclaiming life, asserting presence, and building community connection. Over time, Alex also focused on documenting the history of the house and neighborhood. Old photographs, letters, and memories were carefully cataloged alongside new ones, creating a living record of the home's journey. Conversations with longtime neighbors helped fill gaps in memory, adding richness and detail to the story. This documentation was not just for legal or formal purposes. It was a celebration of continuity, connection, and the resilience of a home that had weathered years, changes, and challenges. It became a treasure trove of history that Alex could revisit, share, and pass down to future generations. Alex also found that their experience with the HOA offered insights for others in the community. They began sharing their journey, explaining the importance of preparation, understanding rules, and asserting rights respectfully. These conversations were not about complaining or criticizing, but about education and guidance. Neighbors appreciated the perspective, learning how to navigate conflicts, protect their rights, and maintain positive community relationships. Alex's experience became a resource, an example of how calm determination and careful planning could transform a potentially stressful situation into a meaningful lesson. Family members, some visiting from out of town, were amazed at the transformation. They marveled at the restored home, the garden, and the renewed sense of life within the walls. Alex shared stories about the challenges faced with the HOA, emphasizing lessons of patience, persistence, and respect. These family conversations strengthened bonds, ensuring that the experience became part of shared history, not just a personal achievement. The home had become a symbol of resilience, a tangible example of overcoming obstacles while maintaining dignity and connection. Alex also spent time reflecting on the emotional journey. The early days of frustration, fear, and uncertainty had evolved into clarity, strength, and pride. The process of reclaiming the home was as much about internal growth as it was about external action. Every visit, conversation, and decision reinforced values of patience, preparation, and community. Alex realized that true ownership was not just legal or physical, it was emotional, social, and deeply connected to the sense of belonging that a home could provide. The community, in turn, benefited from Alex's presence and engagement. Casual interactions became richer, relationships strengthened, and a shared understanding of fairness and cooperation grew. Neighbors who had been skeptical or indifferent during the HOA conflict now expressed respect and camaraderie. The experience had transformed a challenging confrontation into a catalyst for stronger neighborhood connections. Alex had not only reclaimed a home, but had helped reinforce the social fabric of the community. In practical terms, Alex also focused on maintaining the property and ensuring that future conflicts would be minimized. Clear agreements with neighbors, ongoing communication with the HOA on neutral terms, and careful documentation of important details became part of routine. These measures were proactive, preventing misunderstandings and fostering transparency. Alex understood that home ownership involved responsibility, vigilance, and care, not just physical presence. The effort invested in maintaining relationships and documenting history was as important as the structural care of the house itself. Evenings often found Alex on the porch, reflecting on the journey and observing the quiet rhythms of neighborhood life. Children played in the distance, neighbors walked their dogs, and the sounds of life created a soothing backdrop. In these moments, the house felt complete, not just a reclaimed space, but a true home filled with memory, community, and continuity. Each sunset, each shared conversation, and each small act of care became part of the living experience of the house, reinforcing the sense that belonging was not just about presence, but about connection and participation. Alex's story also became a source of inspiration. Friends and neighbors who had followed the journey admired the patience and strategy that turned a difficult situation into a positive outcome. The lessons of preparation, respect, and calm assertion were appreciated not only for legal or procedural insight, but for life in general. Alex's experience showed that challenges could be transformed into opportunities for growth, connection, and learning, providing a model for handling obstacles in other areas of life. As months passed, the home continued to thrive. The garden flourished, the house remained well-maintained, and relationships with neighbors grew stronger. The earlier tension with the HOA faded into memory, replaced by mutual understanding and recognition of rights. Alex often reflected on the journey, acknowledging the effort, perseverance, and support that had made the return possible. The house, once restricted by signs and rules, was now a place of freedom, comfort, and belonging. Each day reinforced the lesson that home was more than a building. It was a community, a history, and a part of one's identity. Through the ongoing care, reflection, and engagement, Alex ensured that the house would continue to be a source of life, memory, and connection for years to come. The challenges of the past were integrated into the story of the home, enriching its meaning and value. The return after years was no longer defined by conflict, but by resilience, restoration, and the joy of reclaiming a rightful place in the world. The house stood as a living testament to the power of preparation, patience, and human connection, a home in every sense of the word, ready to welcome life, love, and memory into the future.